I always find it a little funny when, and it's fine, really, it's fine. When I do a show, when I do an episode, a Prime episode of Sovereign Tech, of course, that is totally, balls to bone. It's pure tech, like almost no, no anarchism, no philosophy, no real history, none of that extra goodies. Yeah, I mean, people are kind of like, well, where's the other stuff, Stallion? Come on. And of course, the man of tomorrow, the Golden Stallion, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, here for you for a little Wednesday Patreon only Q&A. And this week, just coming off of doing that entire episode, a whole 2 hours while I was on location, a whole 2 hours of, talking about Vault 7, breaking everything down. And really the overall point, now, I want to talk about this a little bit because I got quite a few questions on and quite a few comments. And then we have, we've got some good questions to get to here. We've got a couple of kind of, tech, one certainly very much a tech question. The other's kind of a quasi-tech question. And we got some other fun stuff. But yeah, I mean, I could have just done 15 minutes on Vault 7. And, within 10 of that, say, okay, none of this is really going to harm you. None of this is really going to hurt you, and like this is meant for very specific targets. This isn't like the NSA leak or, leak about what the NSA was doing because it's not mass surveillance, inherently. That this is all just very expensive and really, it's risky, it's high risk, and it's very expensive to be used against you. Or certainly, I mean, and that goes up orders of magnitude when you start talking about doing it against entire populations. I could have just done that and then maybe spent 5 minutes on my theory on why exactly, I think that these were actually released. Again, I am of the opinion that, well, now one comment I got, somebody gave me a comment about, because I brought up the, kind of the conspiracy theory that Julian Assange is dead and that the Assange you're seeing or hearing is not the real deal. Somebody's like, oh, come on, don't fall for that. That's Alex Jones shit. Well, I spent most of that episode ripping on Alex Jones. Okay, so I don't fall for Alex Jones shit. I don't even, really care for the guy at all. But, regardless of the situation with Julian Assange, I am of the belief that WikiLeaks is either co-opted or is an unwillful idiot. I mean, they're just, they are not the purveyors of any kind of grand truth anymore. How about that? Whatever the reality is around that, personally, yeah, I think they're compromised. I think they are being used to forward various political agendas. And when I say political, I don't mean like anarchist agendas. I mean they are being used to forward the political agendas of actual politicians, whoever that may happen to be at the time. And it doesn't just have to be the United States either. So like I could have spent 5 minutes just covering that and saying that, well, like I said, my ultimate, kind of conclusion is that the CIA wanted this stuff to get out because they lost control of these tools, which is a fact. If you accept that the Vault 7 Year Zero documents are legitimate, which I do, that they lost control of these tools and they needed to get it plugged up and they couldn't do it themselves because it is such, again, handling this kind of has to be done at the manufacturing level, and this is such an expensive and high risk. These are such expensive and high risk methods that they were employing or that they have theorized, whatever. And I could have just talked about that. But I wanted people to know. I wanted to break it down. I wanted to give you some of the names. I wanted you to know that, no, this is why this is bullshit. This is why this isn't a concern. This is why, I wanted to really, really break it down. So it took 2 hours, and sometimes that's just how a topic goes. In fact, I'm not the only one. A lot of other shows that have finally gotten around to covering Vault 7 have done extended episodes of their shows because there is so much, really to cover, even though the end conclusion is that you likely don't have much to worry about. Okay, especially if you take, take some of the actions that I described, in in this week's episode of Sovereign Tech. What was that, episode 216, 217? I think it was 216. And it's Vault 7, the facts and the fiction. Okay, because there's a lot of fiction that was being schlepped around by, again, WikiLeaks themselves. Very, very disappointing. Points that maybe I didn't bring up during it. Yeah, I didn't bring up the point that, well, this shows just how powerful of encryption we have today, because what the CIA has to do, to effectively, circumvent that encryption to some degree, not that they break the encryption, but just to get data with it in use, is that they have to crack your entire phone. It's the only way that they can, really get past this encryption. Sure, those are all valid points to bring up. Ones necessarily that I didn't. But again, Vault 7 really isn't something to worry about. The politics around it, I didn't get into a huge political conversation around it. I would hope a lot of that would be obvious. And the obvious major point is that you can't trust government with 0 days. You can't trust them with security exploits. Those things, what needs to happen is when these security exploits are discovered, they don't get bought up by governments. They need to get plugged instantaneously. You fix them, and that's the only way that, that this really gets solved, is that the companies involved end up going and fixing them. Not that the CIA collects them, like a child's tool set or something. That's really all there is to say on that. Vault 7, there might be more interesting things that people find out about, that come out about it, but I don't know. There's not a whole lot else to say, I don't think, and I can't picture there's anything like some of the stuff in there, like especially a lot of the dealing with the DLLs with Windows, were really that had the potential to be serious. But understand you had to kind of get into a bit of a gateway in that. Like there was the one DLL that was affected through Notepad++, which is a very popular developer piece of software, which that already, Notepad++, once they found out, they were plugging it. And again, that this kind of goes to, I think it really kind of proves my overarching theory, is that this was a planned release by the CIA. And it was planned because, so that companies like what happened, Notepad++, or plus, and, and some others started making motions, making moves, and solving all these, all these little plug, all these security exploits, and sewing everything up. So anyway, yeah, Vault 7, there's a lot to talk, there's a lot to cover, but I just, I took the 2 hours to try and prove that it's not something to get all hot and bothered about. So, I could have gone on some, loud, wild tirade, kind of scream or screed, both work, about how this is what happens when government does this. I could have done that. Certainly, maybe that's what people were hoping for. I don't know, because that episode's actually getting shared around quite a bit, and it's got quite a few more downloads, at least at this stage in the game. Usually, I don't count how many listens an episode of Sovereign Tech has for 2 weeks. I don't really count it, just because some people are behind, and usually it just takes that long for one to do the full rounds. But anyway, this one's getting certainly a lot of plays because I think a lot of people want to know the deal. But, at the end of the day, it's actually kind of boring because, it's serious and it's bullshit what the CIA is doing. No question about that. No, the CIA does not have the right to do that. Absolutely, the answer is they should be, they should be telling companies about it, if anything, and that way the companies, can sew the stuff up, like I said. But again, this isn't something that really affects everybody. This is very, very specific shit. And of course, I already talked about in the episode what are the best ways to mitigate against even being targeted. In episode, was it 216, 217, whatever, of the Vault 7 episode. Anyway, so there you have it. Certainly a lot of people enjoyed it, but I did get some emails and messages where people are like, oh, you mix in some other stuff. And of course, this might lead into, well, okay, no, actually, I'll hold off on that, and I'll talk about a tech thing first, just to get that out of the way, because I did get questions. People were wondering, kind of what's the meaning behind the new intros, new segment intros, or the audio theater interstitials, as maybe is the more technically accurate term, because they didn't play this week, and well, there's a very good reason why. I was on location, and we did 2 hours of really one whole topic. I had thought about getting into some other, I had planned on getting into some other topics. It just took that long to talk about all these things because it was so wide-ranging. It affected so many different devices and so many different market categories, with Vault 7. So I didn't get to it. So I was going to say, well, you didn't get to hear the new interstitials this week, but they should be back next week. And some people ask me questions, about what does this mean? What is all this saying? And I'll get to those a little bit later in this episode. But before we do that, why don't we talk up some tech here? And this is something I've been asked about a few times, actually. And it's an app made by, very liberty-minded people, no doubt about that. And I mean, obviously, or at least by its design, one would envision that, well, it has, kind of liberty oriented goals. And that is Cell 411. Now, a patron, a Sovereign Tech patron, actually sent me a story that kind of covered problems perhaps with Cell 411. However, when I went to go click on the story, it was gone. Like the, I got an error 40 whatever when I clicked on it. But I'll read you the question from the patron overall, and then we can talk about it. Hey Brian, just a basic question here of what your thoughts are on the recently popularized Cell 411 app. Not being open source is a red flag for me, and this article linked spells out a few other concerns which had crossed my mind. So I'm not sure what those few other concerns are, but I will talk about Cell 411. Again, I've had a lot of people ask me about it, and kind of what my thoughts are, because I haven't really covered it. So okay. Let's break this down. I mean, the purpose of Cell 411, this is available for Android and iOS. I've briefly mentioned it in the past. I think I talked about it back when, there was the episode where I was talking about, Arcade City, with Christopher David. And I briefly mentioned it just because the rideshare capability that Arcade City was supposed to put out there, which is that even still out? and that piece of shit talked it in Acapulco, or at least that's what I heard. Anyway, whatever. Excuse me. That's. I shouldn't say such things, but whatever. Anyway, Cell 411 implemented that rideshare capability like instantaneously, and for whatever reason, Arcade City couldn't do it. Now, by comparison, okay, and this kind of speaks to one of the first things that the question asker asked, was that yes, Cell 411 is not really a decentralized app. It has servers, okay, that the app interacts with. And that's part of the reason they were able to do such a fast rollout of, say, that rideshare capability into Cell 411, okay? And, it's where Arcade City was trying to do it all decentralized, right? We already covered this in that episode, but I just want to, kind of make a point here. Now, one of my suggestions for Arcade City was to, look, just fucking, if you want to make it right by everybody, just release it as a centralized service and then decentralize it later. Just do the pivot, but just make it that, alternative, to Lyft and Uber and whatever else, while baking in, some aspects of a cryptocurrency or whatever. That was my recommendation in that episode, that I had said. Now, not that I want to promote or want things to necessarily be centralized. I actually don't. Quite the opposite. But, is there such a thing as in software, kind of in some ways, a means to an end? You got to be careful when using that phrase because I don't generally agree with it. To get something off the ground and to, kind of show off proof of concept, which that's what it's really all about, is kind of proof of concept. Now, if your concept is, to be decentralized, well, maybe that runs into certain problems. But, there's something to be said in the tech world, in the software space, and in the app space for at least having something that shows you have some degree of development chops. Okay, so Arcade City, coming out as centralized and then pivoting to decentralized later on would have been, honestly, like I wouldn't have had any real issue with that. Okay, now Cell 411 overall, now to understand, if you don't know what Cell 411 is, okay, this is a service. It has a bunch of different settings, but the basic idea is to organize, kind of activists or a community and to be able to get assistance, in pretty short order. The idea is to get help or information or something. It kind of has like chat abilities built into it, and you can choose, what's going on. Sort of the more popular thing that gets done with it is that if you get pulled over, okay, you can send out a signal, or not like as in the Signal app, but you can send out a message or whatever, or a notification that you are pulled over, and then people will start messaging you, do you need help? Now you can choose where exactly these go. Okay, you have like public cells, which are very, cells are these very specific groups, okay, that you can be put into, or that you can only send to if you want to, people that might be able to really help. I don't know, like a legal team, or cop blockers or something like this, all of which, whatever, do what you do. Then there's Global Alert, which just sends it out en masse. Okay, and you'll get a notification as to how many people potentially received it, so you're not just shooting out in the dark, when you need some kind of help or, are looking for some kind of information. And then there's like an all friends, where just everybody that you're kind of connected with on Cell 411, will end up getting it. So there's some interesting things. There's like a live stream video aspect of it as well. But bottom line is that, or at least how it seems to be getting used by what I perceive, is that this is very popular for activists. Like I said, people that do cop blocking, okay, where they're videotaping the police to make sure, to try and keep them honest. Or it's being used as, and there's been other apps that have kind of done this sort of thing. Also, there's the ride sharing capabilities, but also that, it can be used to, maybe you just need, I don't know, your cat's in a tree or something, and without having to call the government or something, you could just use that. You could just use Cell 411, and maybe a friend can come and help you. The concept itself is very, is interesting. Okay, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. The fact that it's central, the fact that it's not open source, okay, that I agree with the question asker. That's a red flag for me. Okay, I'm not pleased, that it's not open source, because one of the things, speaking of one of the important things from Vault 7, look, a lot of that might not have been an issue if a lot of the things that were exploited were open source, and like the code could have been checked out in the first place, for these bugs. Now, you don't want to fall for what I call on Sovereign Tech the open source fallacy, where just because something's open source means it's secure. No, you have to have people actually look over it, look over the code. I'm not 100% certain why Cell 411 isn't open source. Is it a business decision? Yep, it's a very common business. I don't know that it's that. I'm just saying that it could be, because that's a very common business decision that gets made, especially with startups, is that they keep the code closed source until they kind of become a name and they really make, investors happy and all that. In fact, investors generally want software to be closed source. That way, they don't have to deal with competition. And then, down the line, maybe they'll open source it, right? Like Telegram eventually became open source. There's other apps that, down the line, they'll end up becoming open source, even though at first they're closed. Sometimes it's closed just for a testing period, That's a possibility. Other people may say it's for security. I don't agree. There's people who go so far as to say that open source software is actually communism. And believe me, I've heard people say that kind of shit, to where, open source software, like that Linux is actually communism and you're not a capitalist if you use Linux. Trust me, make a post somewhere, okay? If you have a few, anarchist or libertarian friends or something, make a post talking about that, and someone will creep up. I guarantee you that'll start saying, "Oh, no, 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 we need to keep these trade secrets and all that." And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with keeping trade secrets, but I'm just saying, I mean, not by their nature. I mean, there are issues, security issues that come up, that I have a problem with, certainly. But whatever, you can choose to do that, of course. But somebody's going to crop up that says, "Oh, no, no, Linux is socialism. This is communism. You might as well turn it all over to the Russians. This is terrible. Blah blah blah." Yeah, people really think that way. It's fucking mind blowing to me. But whatever. So. As far as why it's Cell 411 isn't open source, I don't know. I'm not sure what the thinking is behind that. Now, as far as any potential dangers that come up with it, outside of that, I mean, it being centralized. Yeah, I wish it was decentralized. I really do. But I also, at the same time, for a lot of things, I get why things are centralized. Okay, a hard lesson that a lot of people are learning with Ethereum is that, holy shit, Ethereum is really fucking slow. For some of the, some of the different abilities that we want to be able to do, some of the technical aspects that we want to or technologies we want to take advantage of, or things that we want to make happen. It really, on a business level, it doesn't make any sense to use Ethereum. We'll just stick with the servers because we got to have that speed. Okay, so I get it why I don't hold it too hard against some people when things aren't decentralized. But is that the way I like things to be? Yeah, fuck yeah, I want it to be that way. But also at the same time, like, it's not going to be decentralized really. I guess there's some software I'm having a hard time thinking of it that's decentralized and isn't open source. So maybe both of those things have to happen at the same time. I don't know. Now, one of the problems that occurs with this, and this is the danger, of any of these kinds of apps that I see or that I could potentially see, is that police might actually end up really liking this sort of, like this, the Cell 411 app, because what it could allow for is it could allow for corralling, it could allow for collection of communities and of activists, and getting names and all stuff. Not to say that they couldn't find that out, like that the NSA or the CIA couldn't find that out if they wanted to, but local police, they could just end up using the app. Now, it's an interesting point that this is kind of one of those cases, because in the software license, okay, or the EULA for Cell 411, it's very funny. Again, these guys are libertarians / anarchists, whatever. They made it a point to say, if you are a government agent of any kind, you are not allowed to use this app. But yet the police do. In fact, we know they do because the police have been reviewing it and checking it out. Okay, there's plenty of articles that that talk about it, where it is the police using it. And some of these articles are where the police are scared that this is going to allow for people to gang up on the police, and all of this. And that's kind of, I think, with a wink, kind of the intention here, with Cell 411. But yeah, I could see where it's a double-edged sword, and that's the nature of a lot of technologies. But where it could be used by police, again, they're not supposed to. So here's the one case where they're really not enforcing a contract here. Ooh, society is going to fall apart from that. But the police could use it to kind of corral, I think, people, and they could be pretty clever with it. Is my point. And this comes with the fact that as best I can tell, Cell 411 doesn't have enough anonymity baked into it. But there's dangers all across the board with this sort of thing. So I guess in brief, what I should say is that I don't like that it's not open source. That bothers me. Okay, but other than that, I don't have any huge issue with it. I think it's an interesting kind of app. That's out there. So I don't have any, necessary issues with it. Some of the people involved, I might have like philosophical quibbles with, but the idea itself, the app itself, Yeah, I mean, not one of the most terrible things. I mean, in some ways, it's not exactly, because I know was there Shield Mutual? I don't know. There's some other apps that have been out there that that kind of had this similar idea. In some ways, it's a proof of concept. I mean, it's a first of its kind in many ways. In what it's trying to do, it is popular. People use it, and if it works for them, great. I think there are other methods that I would use if I was trying to. I mean, it depends, because also, like, this works on so many different levels. Like I said, there's the global calling, there's the, all friends, there's the, contact this public cell, and all of this stuff. There might be other ways that I would do that sort of thing. Like if I was wanting to be really serious about activism, and activism to where, hopefully nobody's going to end up going to jail later, etc. I would do things differently, but yeah, I don't have any real like major concerns to sell 411. It depends on what kind of activism people want to do too. I mean, I could see it being a very useful tool for that sort of thing. But yeah, I also, it's not something that I'm going to make a part of Dark Android, because again, it's closed source. You know, that's how it goes. So anyway, I'm sure they have responses to that and whatever, and that's fine. So there's Cell 411 for you. I think it's an interesting app. It doesn't necessarily excite me, but it doesn't have to excite me. I guess I'm just not, I'm not their audience. I mean, usually, for me, like, if something's really, really bad, I mean, there's there's usually only like one or two people, that I want to call, to help me out. And, Cell 411, just like to download an entire app to get in touch with two people, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it's just as easy, to signal them or something. But this is, I mean, this can get into a very large debate over, how do you organize, say activist actions or things like this. Yeah, I mean, these are massive questions, to ask. Is Cell 411 the way I would go? No. But then that's not all that it's about. It's also, I think really what it's just trying to do, it's trying to show off kind of that libertarian paradise where, oh yeah, an app and no need for police, we can make things better and, and kind of solve everything, kind of on our own. And I certainly appreciate that attitude. I think that's the attitude that the app has, and I can definitely, I can respect that. That's what they're shooting for. I might do a different implementation, but I get it. So yeah, whatever. It's a first run. I guess that's kind of my thoughts on it. And again, please, understand, like, I'm not necessarily friends by any means, with the people behind it. In fact, I can think of a few cases, and this is me just playing straight with you. I mean, I can think of a few cases where we would have major philosophical and ideological differences. So I'm not like, oh, I'm worried about, talking bad about Cell 411. I hope I've earned the reputation that I speak without fear, 99% of the time. Okay. The only people I'm ever concerned about pissing off, and well, whatever. I just, I love my listeners. I appreciate the ones that have been around forever. I certainly don't want to do anything, that ticks you people off, because I really love you. But other people, especially people in the tech world, that they've come to know me as really, the guy that's going to tell them how it is, and it's not going to play it soft. So anyway. That's Cell 411 for you. Let's move on to something, another question here. I know you came here to hear me make those sounds, didn't you? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the new intros, and then I've got another kind of tech related question, and then we're going to get into our album of the week that I enjoy doing on these Q&A episodes. So and if you're wondering, yes, obviously I'm not in the studio for the Q&A. I'm using my trusty dusty Kingston HyperX Cloud 2 headset, to be able to record this for you. So, all right. As far as like what's going on with the intros, what's the big deal? Now, I kind of mentioned it in episode, I guess it was episode 215 or 216, when I first aired them. I kind of mentioned it when Stephanie was on. And that was, I had the plan. Now, the new intros all take place on this base in Antarctica. I actually, ironically, I don't exactly know what the proper English is for that. I guess just like you'd say in North America or in Europe, you wouldn't say on, but Antarctica is like something that you just sort of build on top of, and so I think saying on is actually pretty popular parlance. But in Antarctica, it's inside a base in Antarctica, and I hinted, so like I had mentioned a couple episodes previous for Tech History, I actually talked about this oft theorized for decades, Nazi base, from the 40s that they built, in Antarctica, and that was maybe they're trying to find, an entrance to the Hollow Earth, or to find the Vril that were talked about in the book from the 19th century, Vril, the Coming Race, and all this. So the intros, just to kind of, explain a little bit of the mystery. I'm not going to explain it all. Is definitely, playing off some of those ideas. Are you going to experience the Vril? Well, I mean, there is no Hollow Earth, so I'm not going to go there. But that could be fun to talk about some kind of other species that's coexisted on Earth for a while. I'm definitely having fun with it. I'm going into the science fiction and the outlandish, with these new segment intros, and well, I mean, I love the whole spy thing and all that, but I'd like to see where else it could go, beyond just sort of the the super spy, kind of attitude. I get a lot of questions from people saying, how come? Because again, this is these segment intros, they're going to run all the way to episode 225. It's another set where there's like 4 women or more, and and only one guy. And everybody's like, how come there aren't any other guy characters? And some people, I've actually gotten emails from some people saying that they get mad about it. Well, look, okay, first off, they're my fucking stories. Second off, all right, James Bond, I mean, yeah, I know he had like Felix Leiter and all that, but this might surprise some people. I'm a huge James Bond fan. I mean, huge. Like, I read all the books, even the new ones, like, Trigger Mortis and all that, that come out, or Carte Blanche, which is actually kind of a revamp of James Bond. I mean, I am nuts about James Bond. Okay, not to say there aren't issues with the whole James Bond character and and all that. Certainly, I could discuss those, especially maybe from a feminist perspective or something like that. One could take umbrage, but I love James Bond. I'm such a huge fan of those. I'm not alone. Ayn Rand was a huge fan of the James Bond movies and of the books. She considered them like one of just like the really rare examples of great literature and of the good life. And I'm inclined to agree with Ayn Rand. I don't always agree with her on things, but that's one case where, yeah, I think she was on it. Huge James Bond fan. And look, James Bond generally, I mean, he doesn't have maybe, M would be played by a guy for the most part, or there'd be Q or R or, whatever. And I'm open to introducing, some of those characters, but at the end of the day, James Bond did it on its own. I mean, it's, and I think this is another reason why Ayn Rand was, so big on, on James Bond, is because he was this incredible individualist character, and in many ways he really was, especially when you read the books, by Ian Fleming. Look. I'm just living out my little James Bond fantasy, okay? There doesn't need to be any other dudes, just like there didn't need to be any other dudes, in the James Bond movies, unless like maybe it was the bad guy or something. Which, that's where, yes, there are going to be other guys, involved in the story, and where there at times have been at the past, to where the guy is the villain. I mean, and you could say there's another guy, there's Brian Soviet, even though it's just another me, but. I mean, just deal with it. Okay, that's how I look at it. It's not some kind of statement that I'm going to be the only surviving man or something like that. That's absolutely ridiculous. It's just not going to be a part of it. But Yeah, I mean that's kind of the reason for that. Is just it's the whole James Bond thing. Now, does James Bond often have women or multiple women, help him out on his various escapades and missions? Yeah, of course. So that's what I've got. Okay. I mean, I think I bring a lot of creativity and originality to the table, but understand, absolutely, I'm following a James Bond formula, in a very real sense. I'm following a Spy Hunter formula, which a lot of the music's from Spy Hunter that I often use. Okay. So now, as far as what's going on, what are they finding in Antarctica? What's the deal? So to give you kind of a hint, yeah, I am hinting at the idea that there is this very ancient base. Okay, and I mean ancient as in the orders of thousands and thousands and thousands of years, going back to maybe 90,000 years. Now, longtime listeners, or perhaps people that have played one of my games, or both of them, they both exist within the same universe, from Zomia Offline Games. If you played Hyperchronius, which I know quite a few people, and I'm really honored by this, that they play Hyperchronius over and over again, like multiple times, just because they love the story so much. Well, here's a little Easter egg for you, is that Antarctic base might actually be something that Hyperchronius himself created. So I am tying in, kind of the direction that I'm going is I am tying in, and this is only for the patrons to find out about, at least right now. I am tying in the Hyperchronius universe with the larger Sovereign universe, making it a part of it. Because personally, I genuinely believe, I think that there's fair evidence for this, okay, even though a lot of it is speculation, and I will tell you it's speculation, okay, yeah, 90,000 years ago, 70,000 years ago, maybe pre-Toba supervolcano, which we actually talked about in last week's Q&A, that there might have been wildly advanced human civilizations, on planet Earth. Now, if you follow the Hyperchronius story, of course, humans they're originally on Mars, and then they end up coming to Earth. I don't know that I believe that. Okay, that was just that was me playing on a theory, an actual scientific theory out there, that humans aren't actually adapted for the Earth. They're adapted for something else. And so that they might have come from another planet, very much kind of a Battlestar Galactica thing. That's why I went with the whole Martian idea, or, the idea of humans actually coming from Mars and then inhabiting Earth. Again, that's one I don't believe, but I definitely, let's put it this way. I walk around, okay, in life with the notion that humans, ancient humans were not stupid. They're actually just as intelligent as we are, if not more so. And that at a certain point in time, there may have been, again, wildly advanced, technologically advanced, socially advanced human civilizations on this planet, 100,000 years ago, maybe a little less, whatever. I've hinted at the evidence for that many times on Sovereign Tech itself. Maybe the most recent, well, there's been a few times where I've gone over it. Like, I remember I covered the whole story on, they think they actually found orichalcum, which was originally thought to be a mythical metal. And not so anymore. But anyway, so yeah, like this Antarctic base, that is definitely what I'm hinting at, is that this was something that was built, tens of thousands of years ago, and that, Agent Sovereign and company have found it, and are there going to be, I can also hint at this, are there going to be, because there's mention of Nazis, there's a lot of mention of Nazis. Yeah, they're going to be a part of future segments. Make no mistake about that, okay? Space Nazis are just too great a villain, or Nazis in general, to not play off of. So that's something that's coming for the future. Now, some people ask about the transmogrifier, like what the hell is the transmogrifier? What's the deal with that? That's something I'm not going to give you a whole ton of hints on, but it is something that is, changing their literal genetic makeup. From what they are now to something else. So again, these segment intros, they're going to get far more into the science fiction realm. I mean, they already were. Like, how many of them took place on a space station, or whatever else? It's definitely going to get in that direction. But if you're wondering, I got a couple of, those are a couple of the simpler questions, I guess, that I got asked about that. And where is this all going to go from here? Well, we'll see. One of the things I like doing with all the segment intros is I really enjoyed, I enjoy like them having a message. Okay. For example, like, not killing is often a message found in them. More peaceful actions, peaceful resolutions are often, a part of it. Quick hack solves everything, using electronic activism, to get stuff done. Warning about blockchains, the potential of, blockchains to be actually, a controlling force as compared to, a freeing force. We end up with the tyranny of the code. A lot of these different things. And so, I want to make sure you're not so much getting that in this, but you're getting an introduction with the present segment intros, to a direction that I plan on taking things. And I plan on the ideological aspects, completely returning and, and kind of being baked into it. So, it's a lot of fun to do. And I'm actually, and this is probably a good point to do it, I'm going to release sort of a whole package here soon where it's kind of the entire Sovereign Universe story so far. Even more so than like the Soviet Tech 2 episode where I included all the interstitials, because I didn't put in Soviet Tech 1 in that, nor did I put in the 2099 episode, which all of those add on, to the Sovereign Universe. And so I'm going to make like a box set, that will have all of that up until probably the point of the transmogrifier. And then, then there will be a part 2 with what happens after the Agent Sovereign and Dr. Goldblossom and Valeria and everybody else, Stephanie and Pixel, what happens after they encounter, or in Pixel's case, activates the transmogrifier. So there. Anyway, I hope that was just a little fun exploration. I just want to answer a couple of questions on that. If you have other questions, more specific ones, feel free to ask me about that. I there's some things I'm willing to reveal, other things I'm not, other things I want to be, kind of fun. But I am totally attaching the Hyperchronius universe to what happens with Agent Sovereign and all that, and what shape that may take in the future. Will Hyperchronius actually end up being in a segment intro at some point? Ooh, how would that work? Well, we'll see. So, okay, let's, and folks, real quick, understand, in fact, this is really nice, that I got a reminder that a year ago I released my first album, which was The Descent of Ishtar, which you can find audio of the ancients.xyz is where you can find it. You can purchase a copy if you like, where I compose my own music, and I do a dramatic reading of a lot of these ancient texts. Now, I do that because, again, even those are just part of this larger story that I'm telling. They're real. Like the Descent of Ishtar is a real document, an ancient document. And the Dream Stela of Tutmos IV, which is the first single I put out. Those are all real legitimate things, but they are hinting at stories that I am telling through other means. Be it through the segment intros, be it through my video games, whatever. So a lot of that, in fact, Hyperchronius 2, I'm still finishing that up. But I already have planned, I'm going to be making a Tarzan game. And I don't mind admitting it because, in fact, I got a notification about this too, that a year ago I said that the one thing I'd love to, the one franchise I'd love to work in would be Tarzan. And it's true because, well, for a lot of reasons, but one of them being is that he exists in the public domain. So, you can kind of take advantage, and yet you already have this amazing history. Everybody knows who Tarzan is. Yeah, I am going to be, the next game after Hyperchronius 2, in between Hyperchronius 2 and Hyperchronius 3, is going to be a Tarzan game. But I'll let you patrons know that the Tarzan game might end up finding some kind of lost city that, holy shit, might be connected to Hyperchronius. So, whether I tell people or not, I always put little hints and things, and I am definitely creating like a very large universe that that covers a lot of different ground. So anyway, I hope you found that interesting. Enough of that. Let's get into some more questions for you, even though those points were based off of questions. So here's this is a bit of a lengthy question, and it has to do with scheduling. So let's scheduling and social media. So let's read it here. Question. I know you deal with many people on Facebook and Twitter. Several, to me, are just being contrarian and pushing your buttons. Why do you subject yourself to engage with them? Is it hoping that they'll come around, a battle of intellect? A lot of people seem to have abandoned the left-right paradigm and have adopted a religious fervor for the new hyphenated sub political sect, whatever, that they feel is the only right one. Me personally, I give up, and this is the patron saying that. I don't want to convert anyone. I'll engage 3 to 4 times, and that's about it. I am a unique person. I can't pigeonhole myself into that tight of a definition. I think I'm morally consistent. That works for me. If someone wants to cast judgment upon me for not agreeing with them, I run like a Jewish man from the Inquisition. So there's actually kind of a couple questions here. So to answer the first one, or to answer kind of like the first couple within here, why do you subject yourself to engaging with them? Is it hoping they'll come around, or a battle of intellect? Okay, so yeah, on various social media, I get a lot of people, and they're not just trolls. Okay, I wouldn't want to just write them off like that. But I get a lot of people that very much disagree with me. I mean, like, they get hot around the collar about it. Like they do not agree with what I'm saying. Now, first off, understand, and I know this is, or as I understand it, this is kind of a rare trait, and I'm not patting myself on the back. I can completely ignore it. Like, I don't feel the need to finish a conversation. As in, like, I don't feel the need to have the last word. I don't feel the need to, like, rebut every what they think is some kind of a zinger of an argument, which usually they're not. I just don't. Now, my feelings on social media is largely, now granted, I'm a guy, and so my experience online is very different, from what women have to go through. And yes, it is different what women have to go through. Stop. Okay, if you're gonna argue against that, I mean, please, just you can test it for yourself. This is totally, it doesn't have to be anecdotal. It's totally scientific. Create an account, and build it up to where it looks like it has some degree of history, but just have it be with a bunch of pictures of some gal and pretend you're a woman. And I guarantee you are going to get, there's positives and negatives. You're going to get treated incredibly differently than with your, if you're a male, with your, your personal, male account. Okay, it's just so. All right, so granted, I don't have to deal with a lot of the shit that women have to on, these various social media platforms. Okay, but that said, I feel like social media is the mall. Okay, and what I mean by that is like I generally don't block people. I mean, you've got to do something so heinous for me to block you. I generally don't block people. I friend just about everybody, or I don't always refollow, like say on Twitter, but whatever. I just don't care. It's the mall. I wouldn't stop people from going to the mall necessarily. So they show up, they talk, whatever. I don't care. That's kind of that's sort of my rule, personal rule, kind of going forward. Sometimes I'll engage with them, if only, the only times I really like engaging with, say, a lot of my detractors is when it gives me the opportunity to, like, insult them, or, kind of to yell at them a bit. Otherwise, I don't really care. Like, people can say whatever the hell they want, and it doesn't mean much. But that's really the trick. You got to be able to, like, just bend your back and cross your arms and not care, what they're saying. If you can't do that, well, then don't treat social media like the mall, because it won't work out very well for you. I don't expect to convert anyone. I like to, I treat social media as an opportunity to interact with some friends, but mainly interact with other listeners, here and there. And I don't really, yes, I have a Facebook account. I never promote it. I never ever promote it. because I really want that to die. I have to have it for various other reasons. And not saying I don't use it. I'm just saying that I just never fucking promote it on the show. That's why I always say various social media, because I don't even want to really give them the name drop or the satisfaction that I'm on it, even though I am. But whatever. So yeah, I don't expect to convert anybody. It's really just about talking to, other people. And I mean, it's funny too, because these people, I never ever engage on their posts. I never post on their posts. Again, I don't want to really use Facebook much. But they somehow, they always seem fit to come on mine, and then they start tagging other people, and because, they can't handle it on their own because they're not really individuals, they're just collectivists with a black and yellow flag. Man, it's so funny. I laugh at the end of the day about it. So, whatever. Again, the reason that I don't really engage with them, they engage with me, and I don't block people. Like I said, Facebook or social media in general is the mall, so I don't really care. Okay, so let's see. What other questions were there to that? Well, yeah, that's you got it. And what the questioner had said was, I thought that was pretty solid. Okay, so here's the second part of the question. You read a lot. Of course, the questioner is talking about me. You read a lot. You take in multiple podcasts. You edit voice books, which is true. Yes, I edit audiobooks. Been editing a lot of erotica lately. Woo, it's good stuff. You run multiple blogs. You develop games. You do cybersecurity consulting. You interact on social media. I understand why you can script, or I understand why you can script any of podcasts, but follow bullet points. I understand why you can script. I think he's saying he understands why I do bullet points. Okay, because I don't script podcasts. I don't write them out. I just have little bullet points, and that's what I want to run off of. And then he says, "Wow, how do you do time management?" So that's the question. Do you use a scheduling app, a Franklin planner, or similar? Oh, I love a good Franklin planner. I'm an insomniac, talking about himself. I mostly avoid sleep because I have these horrific nightmares. I'm a fast reader, not at a speed level, because I need to retain and enjoy. Absolutely. So the question is, how do I fit all this in? How do I do all of this? Well, here's the first thing, and this is kind of a byproduct of what the question asker asked in the first place about social media, about interacting. I really don't have the time. I'll post stuff, thoughts that I have that I think people might enjoy or something like that, or if I just want to be jocular or funny, but I really don't have the time to interact. I get so many messages from people, Facebook messages or direct messages or emails or something. I just don't have the time, to be able to do all this stuff. I don't really use a scheduling app. I only recently started using a calendar because things have gotten so busy as late, and I'm trying to finish up so many other things that I've felt a need for that. And actually, the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy has been very helpful with getting me set up with that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't really... other than a calendar app, and there's a bunch of different ones, like on Android if you want to use Business Calendar, or if you're a Microsoft guy, just use Outlook. Use Outlook the Outlook app, or it all depends on what you use. It's handy if you're using a Windows 10 computer. So a handy thing with using an Outlook calendar on that, with your Microsoft account. And I think with the Creators Update, which is coming out in a couple weeks, I think they are going to allow for Gmail to work with this, so you can just connect it to your Google Calendar. But it's so easy to be able to just click on the time, on the taskbar in Windows 10, and then it brings up a calendar, not like a calendar app or anything, but it brings up the calendar. Well, actually, it will show you things you need to do, if you have them set up. But it brings up a calendar, and you can just click on a day, and you can create an event right within the taskbar. Makes life so easy, to be able to do that. But I've only recently ever gotten into using a calendar. When I mean recently, I mean in the past month. So the bulk of the things I've ever done, I did without any kind of real scheduling app. I pretty much, I have a sticky note app, and I write down the stuff I want to do. With some of my clients, I actually still use pen and paper, to write down all the different tasks that I need to do for them. I don't know. I keep a lot of it in my head. frankly, and none of this is a boast, because I actually, I am envious of people that are really, really, I mean, I'm not disorganized, but I am envious of people that have these really great Evernote skills, or, they use OneNote a lot, or, or they're, they do amazing things. Boy, Stephanie's calendar, holy shit, it is a thing of beauty. And when people see it, they're always in awe. I mean, talk about somebody that does a lot. I mean, she and I both do, a shit ton. Yeah, and I want to get to that point to where I'm doing that, and I'm starting on getting to that point. But yeah, so to answer your question, I mean, I'm honored. I appreciate that, and yeah, I do a lot, and a multitude of things. I don't just do one thing for one day. I work on multiple projects, throughout the day. And lately, I'll be honest with you, and this is part of the reason I think that I was really open to, switching to a calendar and all this, because lately I've really been I haven't had a whole ton of time for relaxation. I listen, like the person said, I listen, I do. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to some podcasts, and when I hear somebody say that they play video games from 6 to 10 p.m., I am so jealous of that. And they do that on a daily basis and everything. I don't even know what it's like to have. I mean, I still play video games, here and there, but not to that length. And I used to. I mean, shit. When I was teenager and early 20s, before going into the military and all that, I mean, I would be playing video games, I mean, almost nonstop. There's days where I'd be playing until 7 a.m. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, in a good way, I think. But yeah, I've really had a hard time having actual free time. Still getting into reading, because that's quintessential to what I do, and and to existing, in my opinion. But yeah, man, just have a really great calendar set up like that. That I think is really, really the key, and that's the best. That's the best I can say on that. Brett Venat's really good about a lot of this stuff. So is Jake DeSillis of The Voluntary Life, about how to really organize your time and better time management and everything. It's really something that, I mean, I get shit done, but it's definitely something that I have a lot of improvement that I can make personally. Like I said, I still get a lot done, obviously, and I'm honored that people enjoy it. But yeah, time management is forever the struggle when you're kind of a solopreneur, like I am, because I mean I'm an independent contractor. Even when I've worked for people, I send a commission invoice. I don't. It's not like it's not like I get W-2s. I'm not that kind of. I'm not an employee. Effectively. So. Yeah. Time management's a big deal. I mean, it's hard. This is one of the hardest parts of entrepreneurship. Is that schedule and the fact that you can't count on anybody else. You really can't. You've got, it ultimately falls on your shoulders, everything that's going on. Unless you have employees, and of course those employees can rely, or will learn to rely on you. But otherwise, I mean, and I have, believe me, I have nights, I've had sleepless nights, I've had panic attacks, where, I didn't, I'm not suffering the nightmares like the listener mentioned. I feel terrible about that. And I know the listener, I know the deal behind that. So, I'm speaking as a friend, but, yeah, but for me personally, I mean, just to get shit done, and and at times to make ends meet and whatever else. I mean, yeah, it is super fucking stressful at times. And yeah, I mean, I still get in the time to fuck. I mean, oh, how does one go without? I mean, no, there's plenty of people that are just fine not having sex as often as I care to, but. Anyway, yeah, it's really tough. Entrepreneurship, and I've said this many times, and some of my entrepreneurship friends, I have a lot of friends who are they kind of make a living off of getting people into entrepreneurship. I really don't, I don't know that everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. And recently I had a similar question like this asked, and I think I might have talked about that a bit. I mean, because it's tough. It's really, really tough. I mean, and the rewards can be really, really great. The ability to kind of write your own schedule and all that is really great, but you can still run out of time. And the big thing, and I know I said this on previous Patreon episodes, the big thing that Stephanie and I run into is not like slacking off. It's not like, oh, we can write our own schedule, so let's have fun, 20 hours of the day, and then 4 hours, we'll actually work. It's the exact opposite. You never know when to stop working. So I guess I was kind of hinting at this earlier, that I don't have time to interact with people. Like, I don't really have much of a social life. I really don't. Okay, I have very, very few like super close friends. I mean, of course, Dunbar's number, you really can only have so many, but 5 to 15 or something. I have very few close friends. There's a lot of people that I'd love to talk to more, that I'd love to help out more, that I just can't. I just don't have the time. So my social life very much suffers. That's really the key to, without doing better time management up until recently, and but still being able to get so much done. That's really what it comes down to. Is I just don't have a social life, and I think some people would want to say, oh, well, that's sad or something like this. And yeah, I mean, again, I'd like to interact with people a lot more, than just on a podcast and on Patreon and everything. But yeah, as things stand, I mean, I'm working to get to that point, of course. Like that's the whole reason I do so much is, to try and get to the point to where I can have that very, that more freeing social life, or just a social life in general. So there you go. Anyway, yeah, calendar apps, like I said, there's Business Calendar. In fact, I think they're up to actually Business Calendar 2 for Android. That's a really great one where you can make an independent calendar. The calendar system, of course, within Thunderbird, which is Lightning. I think they built it right into it now. Like, it just comes with it. It was an extension forever, and now it just comes right in it. That's very handy to make use of, especially if you want to make independent calendars, and you don't want your calendar to be, with Microsoft or Google or Apple or whoever. Gmail obviously does what it does. There's certainly advantages to that. As far as like I do like Outlook better as far as, those kind of calendar services go, but my favorite is to just have an independent calendar that that you can sync, like say with Business Calendar on an Android device or something like that. So that's it. That's what I do. There's no there is no magic. I use a very simple sticky notes app on my computers to list stuff off, and there you go. I don't have like this grand Google Doc where I write things up or anything. Yeah, there you have it. So, okay, let's get into, let's switch it up, and let's talk about the albums of the week. Hopefully that answering those questions was interesting for you. And of course, feel free to send in more questions. I enjoyed actually getting, kind of a couple of tech questions here, on how to do things. I will say quick though on the scheduling thing. I know like Brian Tracy and some of these other guys, I know they're really big on this idea of doing a memory dump, like a brain dump, where you just write everything down. That way you can kind of get it out of your head. Doesn't exactly work for me. I've tried a lot of those different methods, and it just doesn't really happen. I don't know. I'm always thinking. Like I was at a yoga retreat this past weekend, which I actually plan on doing an episode kind of reviewing it, because boy, it was something else. But like even when I was doing the yoga and all that stuff, like there was times where I was, like my mind just, this is why I have to meditate, because otherwise my mind never shuts off. But like my mind just couldn't shut off, and I was already thinking, it's like, okay, and it was all stuff related to sovereign tech. All right, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do about this and everything? Yeah, boy. No matter how many times I brain dump, just more shit comes up. So I don't really find those necessarily helpful personally, but maybe you'd find it to be different. So, okay, there you go. We talked about scheduling apps, or, we talked about, okay, so I've also tried out Todoist, like the premium version. I've tried out Wunderlist and all this stuff. Also, again, none of that really helped me at all. Just a very simple sticky note tab, or even before there was a sticky note app. Even before that, I would even just use Notepad, like straight Notepad, say on Windows or something, and I would have documents, filled with things to do, and I'd erase them as I kind of go along. That's just me. I know I'm not the only one either. Actually, I know Mary Jo Foley, who is very famous for being a Microsoft reporter, who I followed her work for decades. She does the same thing. She just uses Notepad. Like, she's never gone to OneNote or anything, and somehow she keeps all of this shit together. I mean, it's fucking amazing because she does real journalistic heavy lifting. So sometimes it can just be things that simple that work well enough for you. It's whatever works for you as far as all that goes. So, but anyway, but thank you, for recognizing, and I appreciate the compliment of how much I do and what I get out there. I'm really honored by that. Okay, so let's do this. Oh, real quick. Okay, reading. As far as reading goes, I only read one book at a time. Only one book at a time, and I'll finish that one book, and I won't go on to another one until I'm done with that book. One book at a time. That is so key. And I'm with you. I'm not a speed reader either because I need to consume and chew on what I'm actually taking into my head. Okay, album of the week. Here we go. I promise. Now we're really doing it. We're doing the album of the week. How far are we in? We're over an hour. God damn it. Okay. Well, I'll try not to make this too long. The album of the week this week is actually, this is something that I mentioned about 100 episodes ago, I think, on Sovereign Tech. And it's amazing to be able to say that. Yeah, it's like, yeah, we talked about this 100 episodes ago. So, like, literally it might have been episode 116, 118, something like that, where I first encountered this guy that I'm going to tell you about. His name is Kane Roberts. And I actually had a listener kind of ask me about this in another group, and he wanted to find something. He's been so enamored with Kane Roberts, and he wanted to find something like Kane Roberts. And so that's kind of what inspired this for Album of the Week. Now, Kane Roberts is a metal musician. He's a guitarist and a singer and a songwriter from the 80s. He first really came into prominence. He ended up becoming part of Alice Cooper's band after Alice Cooper got over one of his latter benders and, finally came clean and started his really what ended up becoming an 80s domination. I'm a huge fan of Uncle Alice, Alice Cooper, particularly his 80s work. There was a time where I would have held him up almost as high as Kiss in my list. And I think really ever since with Alice Cooper. Now, understand, I'm a bigger fan. Like, I get it, $1 Billion Babies, all that stuff. That's great. I won't take anything away from that. Being the progeny of Frank Zappa, the musical progeny in a way of Frank Zappa. Really, that's something. Okay, you've got something going for you. Welcome to My Nightmare. All that stuff's great. Flush the Fashion. I mean, I dig it all. But where I really like Alice Cooper is in the 80s when he came out with Raise Your Fist and Yell, and then he came out with a sequel album called Constrictor, which is Constrictor's best known for having the theme song to Friday the 13th 6 on it, which is Man Behind the Mask, which is a great song. It's actually what got me into Alice Cooper, so because I'm also a Friday the 13th fan, as well as Nightmare on Elm Street and some of these others, Halloween. Not so much Halloween, but anyway. So so he had these two albums that came out like in 86 and 88 it was Raise Your Fist and Yell and Constrictor. Now, the band at the time, I don't recall the drummer's name. I might have even had two different drummers at that point. Drummers, sometimes they're a very important part of the band. Other times it's just a revolver. That's just how it goes. But he had his guitarist. His band, his guitar team was Kane Roberts and Kip Winger. Now, Kip Winger, of course, would go on to do Winger, which is also one of my favorite bands of all time, and really has never made a bad album. In fact, the later they go, the better they get. Winger 3 was phenomenal. Winger 4 had a message. Not the greatest thing on earth, but when you get into Better Days Coming and Deal with the Devil, oh man. Oh, this shit's so good. Or Karma, I think was the name of the album, was the one that Deal with the Devil was on. So Kip Winger, of course, goes on to all kinds of, great fame and just incredibly talented musicians, with Reb and all those guys. But before that, he was he was with Alice Cooper along with Kane Roberts. Now, Kip Winger was brought on for the obvious point that he had so much talent, and Kane Roberts was brought on by Alice Cooper's own admission at the time. Again, we're talking the late '80s. He was brought into the Alice Cooper's band because he thought people would just love to see this guy because Kane Roberts is huge. I mean, he's tall, but like he's a really jacked dude. I mean, like really like bodybuilder jacked dude. I mean, he still is. He's just a massive, massive guy. And, so he's kind of a freak show up there on stage. Not to say that other guitarists have never done that. Certainly George Lynch of, Lynch Mob and Dokken fame, he had to actually calm down on lifting weights because it was interfering with his ability to play. And, of course, he's one of the greatest guitarists of all time. Now, I don't know that Kane Roberts is necessarily one of the greatest guitarists of all time, but he's certainly a hell of a player and a hell of a singer-songwriter. And he has a very unique, kind of sex-drenched, cheesy style that I absolutely love. So he had 2 albums. He actually has 3. He had one that came out in 2008 called Unsung Radio. He's also a video game developer. Can you beat that shit? No, you can't. But he had 2 albums come out that I think was 89 and 91. The 89 was a self-titled Kane Roberts, which is track for track. There's a great song on there called Triple X that I love. There's a whole bunch of them. The whole album's great. And then there's the 91 album, Saints and Sinners, which has, oh man, I'm Not Looking for an Angel, Dance Little Sister Dance, Twisted. I mean, there's so many. In fact, there's even a co-wrote song with Bon Jovi on there that's a ballad. Does anybody really fall in love anymore? All great songs. Both of those albums, Saints and Sinners and Kane Roberts, the self-titled, are track for track albums. Like every song's fucking great. But if you wanted, now, those would be my album picks. But then if you want to get like more of Kane Roberts, well, his stylings certainly came to fruition on the Alice Cooper albums that he was a part of. The 2 big ones being Razor Fist and Yell and Constrictor. And on Razor Fist and Yell, Prince of Darkness, Freedom, I mean, there's tons of great songs. On Constrictor, of course, there's Man Behind the Mask, Teenage Frankenstein, World Needs Guts, Life and Death of the Party. I mean, there's all these great songs on those albums. And you get the Kane Roberts experience, and you get a touch of Kip Winger, too. Now, after those 2 Alice Cooper albums, so what I'm giving you here for the album of the week is actually the entire Kane Roberts experience, okay? After Razor Fist and Yell and Constrictor, of course, he came out with the greatest hits album called Prince of Darkness, because those 2 albums, Constrictor and Razor Fist and Yell, like they were doing money. They were revitalizing Alice Cooper, from his kind of his 70s shtick. Like he was fitting right in with all these 80s, what get called hair metal bands, even though I hate that term. And so, he came out with the greatest hits album at that point. Not a very popular one, but it made sense at the time. And then he comes out with, the magnum opus for Alice Cooper for a lot of people, and that is the album Trash. Now, Trash still had Kip Winger on there, and I'm sure Kane Roberts contributed at some points to it, but it's not one, like if somebody asked me, what else has Kane Roberts been on? I don't think I'd necessarily list off Trash. But that trilogy of albums, I mean, and not to say that he stopped. I mean, after that, Alice Cooper came out with Hey Stupid, which has, Feed My Frankenstein on it, which is, I mean, that whole album's awesome. Even the song Hey Stupid's great. There was a fantastic remaster of it that came out in like 2010, I think. And then, he did Last Temptation, which is very different. It's a concept album, but it's great. And then, of course, Alice Cooper goes on to do 2 of my favorite albums by him. Probably my 2 favorite albums outside of Razor Fist and Yell and Constrictor, that being Brutal Planet and Dragon Town. And then he went on to do other things. He did the Eyes of Alice Cooper, Diamond... not Diamond Eyes, Double Diamond. Anyway, I can't remember. Diamond... It's Rusty Diamonds, I don't know, something like that. There was that album that came out after The Eyes of Alice Cooper. Then there was Along Came a Spider, and then he did Welcome to My Nightmare 2. All those are fine, but like there's definitely these points where Alice Cooper does like these sequel sets, not counting Last Temptation, but like where you had, you have Razor Fist and Yell and Constrictor, that's a 2 set. Then you have Trash and Hey Stupid, that's a 2 set and a phenomenal one. And then you have these two are literally connected, that being Brutal Planet and Dragontown. Now they're literally connected, and these are Alice Cooper at his absolute heaviest. These are hardcore. I mean, these are super heavy fucking metal albums. Okay, like, I mean, dun 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 dun, dun. I mean, like, really heavy. So with those, like in Dragontown, you hear direct references to characters and songs created in Brutal Planet. So they're literally sister albums. But he does that every once in a while, where like he experiments with the style, does 2 albums of it, and moves on, and they're always great. Those 2 albums always end up, you know, rocking it out. So anyway, but we're here to talk Kane Roberts, and of course there is Unsung Radio. It's very different. You can listen to it if you really want to, you know, if you're a Kane Roberts enthusiast. But getting your hands on the Kane Roberts self-title, Saints and Sinners, and then if you love those, go back to Alice Cooper's Raise Your Fist and Yell and Constrictor. Both of those albums, and then if you want, you know, you can rock out Trash, because who the hell doesn't? You know, Alice Cooper's album Trash. But those are my album picks. Great for working out, great for fucking, great for everything. Great for driving around, great for, you know, just listening to while you're making tea. I do it all the time. Just top-notch music. I mean, it really, really is. Kane Roberts is, you know, Unsung Radio, unsung fucking hero. And he supposedly has a new album coming out soon. I hope he does. I hope he releases it. I can't wait. I'm excited for it. I think the guy's just got so much talent. It's a shame that he never really took off. And in fact, I heard an interview with his producer, which is how I first heard about Kane Roberts. And the producer said he said he couldn't understand why he didn't make it, like, because he had everything going for him. And I agree. The guy had, and in some ways still has, everything going for him. I mean, holy shit! What a talent. Not just musician, but style. The whole thing. I mean, this is a guy that has style and substance, frankly. So anyway, there you go. Kane Roberts. All of them are in the show notes. If you want to find, like, if you didn't understand what title I said, they are in the show notes, you know, to look that up. But that's it for this week. That's enough Q&A. Hope that was good. I think next week we might have a highly technical one, or it might end up being another religious one, because I have a bunch of those, or maybe it'll be the drug one, because I have all of those that I need to get to. So anyway, there we go. Woo! Great Sex and Science Hour will be coming out this week, and of course got a dynamite Sovereign Tech lined up. In fact, we're going to be talking a lot about time. We're talking time crystals, time zones. This is going to be a very unique episode. You know, because last week it was, you know, just pure tech, and I think we want to get into some fun stuff. So anyway, woo! I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.